Flashboat racing is as Cornish as the pasty. In many villages up and down the county, it's almost a way of life. Support for the local crews is passionate, even violent. Throughout the season, regattas are held in each centre, and clubs travel with their boats for miles to compete. Points are awarded for each class and race, and at the end of the season, county champions emerge. The sport is controlled by the Cornish Rowing Association, whose chairman is Phil Rundle.
The rowing of Cornwall Rowing Association goes back to founded in 1951, but rowing as such, as the type that we know in Cornwall, goes right back to the early turn of the century. This is rowing that I remember old gents, the old water people talking about, of 6-oar gigs. There are some famous names around, but I think it can even go further in this, back to the old sailing days when shall we say, local watermen used to pick up passengers from sailing boats that came in and try and race in. I suppose this gave them the extra trip out, but it's a very, very old sport in Cornwall. Possibly about 7 years ago, we had somewhere in the region of 7 clubs with possibly 100 to 150 members. Now we're in the region, we have 14 clubs as I mentioned, and we have 280, quite feasible by the day, more members registering, that we should have 300 members and over.
You occasionally have a punch-up during a race. Does this ever worry you?
Yes, I must confess it do. we have had in the past very many of these, and we as an association have really been very, very concerned about this. This isn't always an awkward one. I think if we face the fact that we've got men to boys on the water competing in what's a very hard sport, the blood gets hot, the slightest little thing at that time seems to be very, very major. Although probably it wouldn't do an onlooker, to them it does. It could probably lose them a place even in the regatta and possibly a championship. And this builds up. By the time they come ashore, they're talking about it, and it builds up and builds up, and it can become explosive. But in the latter years, this has been the exception rather than the rule.
Regatta Day is half sports day, half carnival, a day out for families and crews. This is CAWSAND, but the village rowing club is a focal point of social life. John Farley is chairman of the rowing club.
Well, it can cost hundreds of pounds a year. It very much depends on whether you have to buy a new boat and new gear every year. Well, a new boat, professionally built, can cost over £300. That's without the paddles to go with it. And they cost something around £11 each. Our club's financed primarily by the women, the mothers of the rowing teams, and the interested women in the village who run coffee mornings and bring and buy stalls and that sort of thing. We also have raffles, and the younger members of the crew last year had a sponsored row which raised a great deal of money for us. So we have a coach load of supporters that go around to all the races, and they're continually comparing boats and crews with previous years, and continually arguing amongst themselves as to who's the best crew and what's the best design and so on and so forth.
The boats themselves, 18 or 15 feet long, are broad in the beam and unstable except when rowed hard. Their construction is a boat-building work of art. CAWSAND this year has a new boat built by master boat builder Fred Dorr, who does it just for the love of it.
The first thing I do is to make a model to what I think is something like what I require, or what I think at least will row well. Having completed this model and I'm satisfied that it's what I want, then the next thing to do is, of course, to layer off on the floor and then make the section molds. And from there on, this is it, and you start then to scarf the stem and the stern post to the keel. There's a great interest and keenness now, of course, in altering the design of the boats. One club trying to naturally build something faster than the other. And of course, what they're doing now is they're building these flash boats with 1/4 and 1/8 thickness, of course, rosin bonded ply. So really they've broken away from the tradition of the normal clinker boat as we knew it, with 3/8 plank of silver spruce ore in the fir family, because of weight naturally, and I think too it's cheaper. I like to see them do well, and I like building it because I think that if somebody here undertakes to help these youngsters, give them something to take an interest in, so an awful lot of satisfaction one gets from having done this. This in itself is very satisfying, really.
There's great competition to get into one of the crews, even though it means months of hard work training. The local coach is Pat Hocking.
It's hard work. It's just like pulling an ordinary dinghy to start off with, but you've got to get used to the length of the paddles and the balance of the paddles and where to sit in the boat, you see. Of course, if you've got a narrow boat, you sit right behind each other, but if you've got the staggered sitting, you can go further forward with the paddle because you've got that more room, you know, on that angle. You've got to know how to pull a boat to start off with, to catch a paddle properly. Also, you've got to have the strength to pull the paddle and how to feather your paddle. Keep your training up all the time. This is the main thing, training. You've got to keep training all the time.
For CAWSAND Club, it hasn't been a great season so far, but they have a great tradition for lady crews, having been Cornish champions for 3 of the last 4 years. After a slow start, they won last time out. Today, they feel good. Ahead lies 2 miles of racing covered in about 15 minutes. CAWSAND ladies: Anne Blagden, schoolgirl, age 16; Christine Arnold, local government clerk, aged 18; Anne Trudgeon, age 15, schoolgirl; and Stroke Anne Woolridge, a clerk, age 17. Their cocks: Andrew Elworthy, age 14.
It's very tiring when you're out there in a race, but usually you don't notice it until you come in. That's when it tells. I like rowing, always have done, and you meet all the people from Cornwall, which you wouldn't meet otherwise. The stroke's very important, but the coxswain, I think, is the most important. He steers the boat and watches the tides and the other boats which are coming up on us, and he tells us when to stroke up, how far away from the buoy we are. It's very important to know how far, because we always stroke up before a buoy and stroke up after the buoy. And you can see what's going on ahead of us where we can't. And of course, he's steering all the time.
It's more fun with the ghost crew. You have a laugh now and again. And they're all good looking.
Today wasn't their day. They finished 3rd, but wait till next time. For the aficionados on shore, it was another race, another result, and another great day out.
Thank you.